Dear friends, English literature. Elizabethan and Jacobean drama, Volpone by Ben Jonson. Short questions with answers. Short questions 10 to 19. Question 10. How does Mosca describe the beauty of Celia to Volpone? Answer. Celia is the beautiful wife of Corvino, one of the legacy hunters. When Lady Woodby comes to visit Volpone, he does not like to meet her. At the time, Mosca accidentally mentions the name of Celia as a beautiful woman. On being asked by Volpone if she has a charming face, Mosca describes her beauty to Volpone. Mosca says to Volpone that Celia is the most beautiful woman in Italy. She is in the first bloom of her youth. She is as ripe as fruit, ready to enjoy it. Her skin is whiter than a swan, whiter than silver, snow, or lilies. Her lip is so soft that it tempts a person to go on kissing her endlessly. If one touches her flesh, it would seem to melt into blood. She is in fact as bright and as lovely as the gold of Volpone. Mosca's description of Celia makes Volpone burn with an uncontrollable desire to possess her. So he becomes desperate to see her first. But Mosca tells him that she is jealously guarded. Volpone decides to see her in some disguise. Question 11. How does Volpone express his passion for Celia after seeing her? Answer. In the mountebank scene, Volpone sees Celia at her window, but he is beaten and driven away by her jealous husband Corvino. Coming back home, he says that his desire to possess Celia is more painful than the blows he received from Corvino. He says that he is consumed by his love for Celia. When he sees Celia, Cupid, the god of love, begins to burn the flame. The flame shut off within its flinging about inside him. It is searching an outlet to be exposed in pain. He is burning with the heat of his love for Celia. It is impossible for him to endure. His liver is melting with the fire of his love for her. So he asks Mosca to help him to possess her, Celia. Question 12. Describe Corvino's sense of honor. Answer. Corvino, one of the legacy hunters, is a jealous husband. His wife Celia is a very beautiful woman. To buy the mountebank's oil, she drops her handkerchief and the mountebank catches it and kisses it. Corvino takes it seriously and thinks that his wife has destroyed his honor by mixing with a common city fool and wants to punish her. But when Mosca becomes able to pursue him to send his wife to sleep with Volpone, we find him a wholly different man. He takes his wife to Volpone's house under the pretext that they have been invited to a solemn feast. Then he urges her to sleep with Volpone to gain his commercial purpose. When Celia asks him whether his commercial benefit is greater than honor, he says that honor is nothing but a meaningless word. It is only a word, a puff of air from the mouth. There is nothing like honor in this world. The word honor was invented to frighten fools from becoming successful. Thus he is a perfect hypocrite. Question 13. How does Volpone try to seduce Celia? Answer. Celia is the beautiful wife of Corvino. Mosca convinces him to send his wife to sleep with Volpone so that Volpone can recover his illness. In order to be an heir to Volpone's property, Corvino sends his wife to Volpone. When Volpone finds Celia alone, he jumps from his bed and begins to praise her beauty. He entreats her to make the best use of the opportunity they have got in lovemaking. He offers her to have a romantic life with him. He tempts her with his fabulous wealth. He offers her pearls of Cleopatra, carbuncle, which is brighter than the eyes of St. Mark, diamonds, which would have brought Lolia Paulina, wife of a Roman governor. But Celia remains unmoved. Finding her unmoved, Volpone grows more poetic and says that if he takes him as her lover, she can take bath in the scent of July flowers and in the breath of panthers. She will be able to enjoy the finest food and drinks. Balponi also said that he will have her dressed in modern fashion like a merry French lady, Tuscan lady or Spanish beauty. Sometimes as the queen of the Persia Shah or the mistress of the Turkish Sultan. Thus Balponi tries to seduce Celia by offering different kinds of alluring things. Question 14. How does Mosca flatter Balponi? Answer. Mosca is a very cunning parasite. And Balponi says that he doesn't like the ordinary methods of earning money, such as trade, agriculture, industry investment, money lending, etc. Mosca agrees with him and adds that he also does not victimize young, foolish spendthrifts. He also says that there are some usurers who ruin plenty of rich young heirs. In the same way, the Dutch swallows a great deal of butter without any ill effect. There are others who tear poor fathers away from their families and bury them alive in some strong prison, where all that would remain in there is their bones after their flesh has rotten away. There are some money lenders who put their debtors in prison for their failure to pay the debts. The widows and orphans of these imprisoned people shed a lot of tears, but Balponi hates to have widows or orphans shedding tears at his doorstep. Moreover, Balponi is not like a thresher who dares not taste even the smallest grain, but feed on mallow and other distasteful vegetables of that sort. Thus Mosca flatters his master and tries to establish that his master is not a miser in order to achieve his aim. Question 15. How is Balponi acquitted from the charge of attempting to ravish Celia? Answer. Having heard the case of Bonario and Celia, the abocatory summoned Balponi and Mosca to the court. The first abocatory asks why Balponi is not present, and Mosca introduces Baltor as his advocate or lawyer. The other three abocatory insists, however, that Balponi be brought before the court. While Balponi is being summoned, Baltor asks to speak on his behalf. He tells the court that Celia has an adulterous relationship with Bonario, for which Bonario's father, Corbacho, decides to disinherit him and nominates the name of Balponi as his heir. The son then plots to kill his father and sends his paramour to Balponi. He also follows her. He does not find Corbacho in Balponi's house. He seeks to implicate Balponi in an accusation of rape. To create evidence for this, he disrobed Balponi and left him lying naked on the floor. As witnesses, Corbacho disclaims Bonario as his son and calls him swan, goat, wolf, parasite. Corbacho denounces his wife as a whore and says that he has seen his wife with his own eyes in the act of sexual intercourse with Bonario. Mosca shows his want as his evidence against Bonario. Lady Woodby declares Celia as a chameleon harlot whom she claims to have seen seducing her husband. When Balponi is carried in, he is shown as an invalid too helpless to commit rape. The judges then sent Bonario and Celia to prison and Balponi home with care. Question 16. Why does Corvino decide to send his wife to sleep with Balponi? Answer. Mosca enters with the news of Corvino. Corvino thought Mosca brought him news of Balponi's death. However, finds out that Balponi's health has improved from scoto Montua's well. Mosca tells him that he is in charged by the doctor's order to find a woman to sleep with Volpone to further aid his recovery. Corvino is frustrated and suggests Mosca a courtesan, a prostitute, but Mosca tells him that they are too experienced and they might trick both of them out of any inheritance. Mosca tells him that it should be a woman that is simple and that Corvino can command, and that one of the doctors offers his daughters. Surprised by the news of the doctor's offer, Corvino decides Celia will sleep with Volpone. Mosca ensures Corvino that he will be named here. Question 17. How does Volpone do to torment the legacy hunters? What does Volpone do to torment the legacy hunters? After getting out of the troubles that Volpone faced in the court, he congratulates Mosca and says that his enjoyment over the affair is more than the pleasures of sex. Volpone is very pleased, showing the innocents getting punishments. Now he wants to torment the legacy hunters a little more. He first heartens himself with a drink. To tease the legacy hunters, Volpone decides to pretend to be dead and asks Mosca to draft a will in his favor. Then Volpone writes Mosca's name in the will as his sole heir. He sends Castron and Nano to announce in the streets his own death. He decides to hide himself on a stool behind the curtain and see Mosca harassing one bird of prey after another. But when they will come, Mosca should be seen as making the inventory of the goods and chattels of his master. This will make the clients crestfallen, and the sight will afford him tons of laughter. Thus, in anticipation, Volpone enjoys the discomfiture of the candidates of his fortune. Question 18. How does Mosca dismiss the legacy hunters one by one? Answer. On hearing the death of Volpone, the birds of prey come in one after another and are amazed at what they see. They see Mosca seated at the table, enumerating the articles to be listed. While each of the legacy hunters asks after the fortune they think they have, Mosca ignores them, continuing to list the various items that Volpone owned. At their insistent demand, Mosca hands them the will and lets them discover the truth for themselves. In a series of asides, Volpone takes pleasure in the body language of his four victims. Mosca pretends not to hear as the four protest. Then, one by one, he berates them for their misguided attempts to win Volpone's inheritance. He reminds Lady Would-be that she offered to sleep with him if she would make her heir. He rebukes Corvino for trying to win Volpone's property at the cost of his cuckoldom. Mosca dismisses Corvino by reminding him how he tried to persuade him to prison Volpone and went so far as to disown and disinherit his own son to win Volpone's wealth. Finally, scolds Voltor for betraying the law that he professes to uphold. Then all the legacy hunters go away humiliated. Question 19. How does Peregrine take his revenge on Sir Politic? Answer. To take revenge on Sir Politic, Peregrine visits Sir Politic's house in disguise along with 3 merchants. After gaining entrance to the house in the guise of a statesman, Peregrine warns Sir Politic that the young Englishman he met earlier, that is Peregrine, was who informed the Venetian government of his plans to sell the estate to the Turks. Peregrine tells him that government officials are on their way to search his house. Sir Politic orders his servants to burn his papers and hides himself in an enormous tortoise shell, just as three merchants disguised as government officials entered the house. They begin to prod and jab Sir Politic, and at last they pull him out and make fun of him. Having thus ridiculed Sir Politic, Peregrine reveals his true identity and tells him that he has now himself on him. Sir Politic, fearing that he will now be the subject to common gossip, plans to leave Venice for good. Thank you, friends, for